Monthly reading updates are back. I'm going to start sharing every month the books I am reading and loving and the ones that are most impacting my business, my mindset, the way that I help you in your businesses. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm, episode 192 with me, Tara Swiger. You'll find the entire transcript, including links to all the books I mentioned, on my website at taraswiger.com/podcast192. You'll also find that link if you're looking below this video or below whatever audio, however you're listening to this, you'll find the link there. taraswiger.com/podcast192. I'm going to talk about a lot of books today, so if you want to go get those books, head over to my site. I link them all up. So last year I read over 70 books, and in 2015 and in 2016 I read 100 books each per year. And for all of those 3 years, and actually going all the way back into 2014, I have reported on my reading every month in a blog post at taraswiger.com. But I kind of accidentally stopped in July of 2017. There's really no reason except that it was an item on my to-do list that I just never seemed to complete in August, September, October. And then I was like, well, I'm so far behind. I don't know if I should do it. And I really just kept forgetting to do it. So I polled y'all on Instagram, which, by the way, are you following me on Instagram? I'm Tara Swiger over there. And if not, you need to go do it because I poll you guys on everything. From what I should talk about on the podcast to where I should go next to teach to what I'm going to watch next on my Netflix queue. So if you want to rule my whole life, you should follow me on Instagram and make sure you're looking at my stories. So when I polled you guys on Instagram to ask you, do you want reading posts back again? You said yes, and that you preferred me to do them in audio video format instead of written format. It was something like 70% to 30% voted audio video. What I've decided to do though is both do them here on the podcast, audio and video, but also link it up on the blog post so that you can find everything. You don't have to listen fully to see the list of books and how to get them. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do one podcast every month about the books that I'm reading. Now, at the end of this podcast, I ask you a question about this format or changing up the format. So make sure that you listen into how you can determine what I do. So you are going to find all of my other reading posts that I've been reading for the last 3 years on my site, taraswiger.com. If you go to this post, this episode 192, you will see a link to the category of all reading posts. And like I said, I did it monthly for over 3 years. So there's a lot of books there to explore. So today I'm actually not going to cover January's books. I'm going to go back and catch up on my favorite books from the second half of 2017. And next month, at the end of February, we'll do both January and February books, and then we'll be kind of caught up-ish. So I got to get to reading too for my January books. So let's talk about my favorite books of 2017, the last half of 2017. The first half I detailed every month, so you can go check those out at taraswiger.com. But in the second half, I have boiled it down to 5 books that I liked best. I read a lot of novels in the second half of the year, and actually I had read fewer books overall in 2017, and I think it's because I started a new business. So in 2015 and 2016 I read over 100, 2017 I read over 70, and I think it's because I started a new business, baby, and that keeps you up at night and away from reading. So these are my favorite 5 since July. They're in no order. I just went back. I keep track of all my books in Goodreads. You can befriend me there. See all of the books I'm currently reading, that I have read, that I want to read. I track them all there. I have thousands of books on my shelves in Goodreads. I'm just Tara Swiger there. So these are in no order. This is just how it came to me. First book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. This is actually the book that comes up most often in my business and in my life since I read it. And I realized after I started to write about it that I already talked about this a lot in episode 174. It's called How to Apply the Slight Edge to Your Business. Go listen into that podcast episode. I go deep into it. The gist of this book is your success in any form. Your life, your wellness, your relationships, your business is made up of your habits. What do you do day in and day out? What creates your life and your success are those habits. So are you sticking with the habits that you know lead to success or not? And these habits are things that are super easy to do and they're super easy not to do. But if you start doing them, they snowball and they have massive, massive impact. This is definitely true in my own business. This podcast is like, doesn't take me a lot of time, doesn't take me too much energy, and yet it's the biggest impact because I've been doing it for 192 weeks on end. So anything you do 192 times, you're going to get better, you're going to get an audience, you're going to have some impact in the way, whatever way you want to have impact. So that's the slight edge. Basically, the slight edge refers to the idea that your edge is the things you do every day. So whether that's journaling, whether that's reading from a book, whether that is pitching your work to people who would like carry it in their shops or sell it at a craft show, whether that is reaching out to customers to see if they're happy, whether that's posting on Instagram, building an Instagram following, or sending your email every week to build an email list. It's all regular habits that make the difference. Now, the second book, these actually kind of are in order, that really super impacted the way I think about things is How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. And that one too, I went into super big detail in episode 183. I actually talk about her theory that she has proven in a lot of studies of how emotions are made in our brain. And the super short lay version of it is that you feel feelings, you recognize that you're feeling something, whether it's, and when I say feelings, I mean physical sensations like your heart racing, your skin sweating, your stomach upset, and then you look at your situation and then you apply what emotion you think fits the situation and the feelings that your body is feeling. And a lot of times that's wrong. And we get it wrong all the time, and our feedback loop for getting it wrong isn't that good. So often we reinforce that a certain physical sensation is a certain emotion, when in fact, maybe it wasn't to begin with. Maybe we don't have any reason to feel that fear, but we've reinforced that we feel that fear every time we feel these ways. And it's not so much about stopping your emotions or not feeling your emotions or that your emotions are wrong. It's just a different way of understanding how your emotions are working, and so that you can take steps to feel more of what you want to feel and be productive in the ways you want to be productive without your emotions totally sideswiping you in your life. So I talk more about that in episode 183. It's called How Emotions Are Made and what that means for your business. Now, another book that is kind of on the same wavelength of physical well-being, impacting your business well-being. Actually, it's not about business at all. The book is called The Last Best Cure. Subtitle is My Quest to Awaken the Healing Parts of My Brain and Get Back My Body, My Joy, My Life by Donna Nakazawa. Now, this book was recommended to me either by Goodreads or Amazon because I read the book, Your Body Keeps the Score, or The Body Keeps the Score, which is all about trauma and releasing trauma. I know it's not really very businessy, but it super impacts your day-to-day life if that's what you're healing from. This book was related to that book, and it was either mentioned in that book or it is somehow tied. And so I read it. I got it from my library and I read it, and it is so good and clarifying and full of studies and information that you will want to read if you suffer from autoimmune disorders or chronic fatigue or any kind of chronic illnesses. So the author suffers autoimmune disorders and chronic fatigue, and she's been dealing with pain, huge levels of pain, dizziness, deep, deep fatigue that makes her not even able to climb up the stairs in her own home. And she has tried a bunch of medication and a bunch of treatments, and she is doing research on the mind-body connection, how that, and also epigenetics, how your your mood and your emotions impact your actual genes and how they like display what's inside your genes, because not all your genes are switched on all the times. You're not always genetically showing all the possible things that are in your genes at a time. They get switched on, they get switched off. And a lot of that has to do with things that we think of being in your mind and your brain and your thoughts and your emotions and your serotonin and your cortisol. And so she is a science writer, so she was writing stories on this and doing research, and she decided to do her own experiment on herself. And she went to her general practitioner. She works with a regular doctor who does a whole battery of tests as a starting point, and then at the end does a whole battery of tests, and in between she tries what are considered alternative therapies like meditation and yoga. And I think she did one more, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe Tai Chi. I'm not sure. I know meditation and yoga for sure. And she reports on what happens to her chemical markers, things like her red blood cell count and her white blood cell count and her heart rate. And it's super interesting. I'm making it sound a little more sciencey than it is. It's written like a narrative, but it is definitely science writing, and it's fascinating. And there are so many studies she cites in it, and I wanted to send it to all of you who I know are suffering from chronic pain and fatigue and autoimmune disorders. So check it out, The Last Best Cure. It's not really about your business, but here's the thing I've realized. A lot of artists and makers who start their own business actually are out of the traditional workforce because of their pain. And they can't work a traditional job because of their pain. And then because of that pain, working at home and having their own business seems like a good path to go down, but they are so limited in the time and energy they can dedicate to their business that they often feel frustrated. And then they talk to me about that frustration, and that's why I'm familiar with this. And that is hard. And there is not a lot as a business encourager and professional enthusiast I can do to help you if you are in too much pain to work on your business. And so I am always reading and looking for solutions to help alleviate that in some ways. That's why I talk about essential oils so much, because that has helped so many of my clients who've been suffering with chronic pain. That's why I read these books about trauma and adverse childhood experiences and healing chronic illness, both for myself and because so many of you, I know it's what's keeping you from having the business of your dreams. So I hear deeply about that. The next book that I just loved in the last 6 or so months is a kind of a weird book. So this book was recommended to me by a Starship captain. I said something and she was like, that's one of the principles in this book. And I was like, what? No, I don't know that book. Got a cheesy title. It's written in the 70s. It's called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Yes, his name is Og, O-G. Apparently total bestseller for decades. This book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. It is a parable. So it's a parable of like this guy who's been the most amazing salesman in all of, it's not Babylon, but like Israel back in biblical times. And somebody comes to him and he has these special scrolls. And he says, these scrolls are the secret to all of my wealth and all of my success. And what you have to do is you have to read one a day for 30 days. Read one every day and read that same one every day for 30 days. Live it, believe it, breathe it, and then go on to the next one. And they build on each other to make you the greatest success. Okay? I know. But then you get into the scrolls, the principles, where it explains each of the principles. And man, I was like, at this point, I was like, this is some cheesy book. But then the principles are things that we exactly talk about here. So the first one, I will greet this day with love in my heart. Basically, the premise is that you are going to become the greatest salesman or the greatest person at what you want to become great at. Like, you're going to have greatness in your life when you live and believe these principles. And the first principle is that you'll greet the day with love in your heart. I was like, yes, that's what I'm always saying. So you assume the best of everybody you meet. You greet the day with love in your heart. You don't focus on hate or crankiness or grumpiness. And instead, you are constantly beaming love, which is what I kind of see my business as. I don't talk about that tons. I mentioned in the past, that's my entire mission. I'm beaming love at you guys. Hope I didn't shock you with that revelation, but that's what I'm doing here. And then one of them is like, you don't quit. You work harder and you go longer and you don't stop. No matter if you meet failure or success, you go on to the next one. And of course, it's talking about sales in the market in old school biblical times. So it's like, no matter how many no's you get, no matter how much rejection you get, you keep going. And it's like 7 principles, and they are exactly, basically my podcast is built on the 7 principles. My business is built on the 7 principles. The way I coach other businesses is built on those 7 principles. Just kind of crazy. At the end, it gets weirdly preachy when the scrolls are done. But if you just read the 7 principles and you really work on incorporating them into your daily life, it's massively useful. It's massively what we talk about here. So if it's a little too cheesy for you, just keep listening to the podcast, because I'm like subliminally helping you incorporate these lessons into your handmade business. So that's The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. It has got so much good, truthy wonderfulness in it, but it is in a weird package. I got it at my library, and when I was linking it up, which it's linked up in the blog post, it's like $5 on Kindle and like $7 for the paperback. It's really inexpensive. But also all of these books, actually, except for the one I'm about to say, I got at my library. So go to your library, get them from your library. Or if you buy them on Amazon, you can use the links on my podcast and I will get a tiny percentage, like a couple cents. So the last one I want to talk about is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. He spells the word. We're just going to call it F because I know sometimes your kids are listening. By Mark Manson. So this is not... This is a book written by a dude that I wouldn't normally read him or his stuff. He started out his website years ago by giving dating advice to single dudes, right? Not where you're going to find Tara Swiger. But he had an article that I found a couple years ago when I really needed it, and I passed it on to Jay, and we quote it all the time. And the article is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And this book is an expansion of the idea. And the idea is pretty simple, but it's really easy to misunderstand. So the idea is that you only have so many Fs, so many flips to give in a day. You need to give them where it matters most. It is not about not caring and standing back and being blasé and be like, I don't care about anything. Because in fact, he points out a lot of the dudes that are like, I don't care about anything, in fact, care so much what people think of them. And that's why they're trying to pretend like they're cool. He's like, no, don't try to be cool. Be enthusiastic. Give your Fs where you want to give your Fs, but don't give them where you don't deserve to give them. And one of the places you don't deserve to give them, and this is the part of the article that always speaks to me and Jay, is to people judging you, to people caring what you're doing. This is like that you have no Fs to give that. Instead, give Fs about the things you're super passionate about, you're super excited about, you're super enthusiastic about. That is where to put your energy. The other way of saying it is you have a limited energy. Where are you going to put your energy? If your energy is doled out in spoons, which is how a lot of people with chronic fatigue and chronic illnesses talk about it, if you only have so many spoons, where are you going to put your spoons? That's what he talks about in The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And he goes into how you let go of caring what people think, how you let go of caring if you're like a total nerd and you're nerding out about something and no one else cares about it, and basically how to live like boldly and live in the way you want to live without being tied up in what people are thinking about you. So that's The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. Like I said, all these books are linked up at my site. All of these books actually are under $20. The Kindle is far under $20, and all of even the hardbound or paperback is right at 20 or under 20. So they're inexpensive. I highly recommend all of them. They are out of the, let's see, if we're talking about what I read since August, there are 30 to 40 books. These are the best 5. So, or they're the most related 5. I read some really good novels. Actually, another novel that I wanted to mention, did I mention this in my favorite things of 2017? I might have mentioned this, is the novel called The Hate You Give. And it is actually a young adult novel, but very well written, very powerful. It is about a young Black girl who sees her unarmed friend shot by a cop, and how her life changes and how she gets involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's not a preachy or political book. It's just like a teenager talking about her life. It's a novel, but it is so good and so powerful and so appropriate for this moment in time. It's just excellent. It's called The Hate You Give. It's one of the top bestsellers in fiction right now. So those are some of the best books I read. I read lots more novels, but I didn't think you guys wanted to hear about all of those. Like I said, you can go back, you can find me on Goodreads seeing every single book I read, and you can find summaries or really lists of all the books I've read for years and years at my site. It's all linked up to taraswiger.com/podcast192. I am always looking for more books to read, so come tell me on my Facebook page. I'm Tara Swiger on Facebook. The page is Tara Swiger page on Facebook. And here's what I want to know. Do you like a episode like this where I talk about a lot of different books? Or would you prefer that I go like a deep dive in the books like I did with How Emotions Are Made and The Slight Edge, and I just cover one book in a podcast episode? So would you like me to pick one book for a month to cover? or talk about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that I liked that month. Tell me. The best way to tell me is to vote on Instagram. When this episode goes live, I'm going to put a poll up on my Instagram stories, and then I'll highlight it on my profile for a couple weeks, so you can go over there and click and vote and tell me one book, mini books, which do you prefer. You can also always just fill out the contact form on my website and tell me there. You can find everything at taraswiger.com, and I'm on Instagram. I'm Tara Swiger in all the places. So let me know what you think, and let me know if you like this or you want to see a different format. Thank you so much for listening. If you're watching, thank you for watching even as the sun was setting and my lighting got darker. Hope you guys have a fantastic day, and keep reading and tell me what you're reading that's good.